Chapter 2, Section 8, our objective is to be able to solve absolute value equations, and this is from the extension at the end of Chapter 2. Absolute value of a number, our technical mathematical definition, is the distance from 0. Absolute value is the distance from 0 on a number line. And my non-technical, non-mathematical definition just means take whatever number it is and make it positive. Absolute value means make it positive. The definition here, the equation absolute value of x equals a asks what values of x have an absolute value of a. Our answers are a and negative a, or a and the opposite of a. And quite frankly, I think when you get the two different variables in there, it makes it a little confusing. Let's take a look at these first 4 examples. The first example says solve for x. Absolute value of x equals 5. There are 2 possible numbers that we can put in here that have an absolute value of 5. Absolute value means make it positive. The first possible answer is 5. Absolute value of 5 is 5. And the second possible answer is negative 5. Absolute value of negative 5 means make it positive. And if you take negative 5, make it positive, your answer is 5. As far as the graph goes, you just need to draw enough on the graph so I can see what's going on. And I'm just going to put down the 0, the 5, and the negative 5. Make sure the 5 goes to the right, the negative 5 goes to the left. And when we graph these solutions, we're just going to put a dot right here on the negative 5 and a dot right there on the positive 5. So our 2 absolute values, absolute value of 5 is 5, absolute value of negative 5 is 5, and there's our graph. We have 3 more examples like this. We don't have to graph these, just solve them. Absolute value of x equals 4. There are 2 numbers that we can put in here that have an absolute value of 4. First one is going to be 4. And the second number, if you put it in there and then make it positive, is going to be negative 4. So x could either equal 4 or negative 4. Letter B, absolute value of x equals 12. There are 2 possible numbers that have an absolute value of 12. First one is 12, and the second one is negative 12. Letter C is kind of a trick here, and you will have some like this on your assignment. Absolute value of x equals negative 6. We just said that absolute value means make it positive. So if we put a number in here and make it positive, is it ever going to equal a negative? Okay, that's not possible. So you can either write down not possible or empty set. And if you ever have just an absolute value sign over here and a negative, it's going to be no answer. We're going to complicate these or add a few steps to some of these. Example A, we have 4 times the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 20. First thing we're going to do to get this x by itself is we are going to divide by 4. And then we have the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 5. And at this point, I like to cover this up. Hopefully you can still see the absolute value sign. There are 2 numbers that could go in there and have an absolute value of 5. The 2 numbers are a positive 5 and a negative 5. So whatever is hidden underneath here either has to equal a positive 5 or it has to equal a negative 5. So we're going to take whatever is underneath here and we have to set up two equations. We have to set it equal to 5, we have to set it equal to negative 5, and we need to solve both of those. So hidden underneath there is an x plus 2. So that is going to either equal 5 or it is going to equal negative 5. And notice when I wrote that equal to 5 and equal to the negative 5, those are my two possible answers. It came outside the absolute value signs. It's either going to equal 5 or negative 5. Those are the two numbers that can go in there that will make that true. And when we solve this, subtract 2 from both sides, you have x equals 3. And when you subtract 2 from both sides here, careful it's not a negative 3. You're $5 in the hole and you borrow 2 more. Negative 5 minus 2, you are at a negative 7. Let's do letter C next. I'm going to cover up inside this expression inside the absolute value sign. And it says the absolute value of something equals 8. There are two possible numbers, two possible values that have an absolute value of 8. Those are a positive 8 and a negative 8. So whatever is underneath here, this expression, is going to either equal a positive 8 or a negative 8. So x minus 2 equals 8, or x minus 2 equals negative 8. Notice I took it outside the absolute value signs. I have the two possible values it can be, so it's not in those signs anymore. And from here we add 2, and in that case x would equal 10. Or we add 2, that is not negative 10. Negative 8 plus 2, you're $8 in the hole. You pay off 2, you are at negative 6. Now let's go back to example B. We're kind of skipping around here. Absolute value of x, subtract 3 equals 4. We need to get rid of this subtract 3 first of all. We're going to add 3 to both sides. And you have the absolute value of x equals 7. Two possible answers here. Two possible numbers that can go in there. And that would be a 7 or a negative 7. Letter D. First thing I'm going to do is get rid of this plus 4. To get rid of that plus 4, we are going to subtract 4 from both sides. And when we do that, we have the absolute value of x plus 3 equals 0. Covering this up, 0 is a special case. 0 is a special case because there's only one number that has an absolute value of 0, which is 0. So if we solve x plus 3 equals 0, we would subtract 3 from both sides. And our final answer for this one is x equals negative 3. So if you have an absolute value that equals 0, you only have one absolute value. Only one number, one solution. Example E, we need to get rid of this subtract 8 first of all. Adding 8 to both sides, we have 0 equals the absolute value of x plus 2. There's only one number that has an absolute value of 0, and that is 0. So we solve x plus 2 equals 0. Subtract 2 from both sides, and we're left with x equals negative 2. Letter F, first thing we want to get rid of is this 2. So we will subtract 2 from both sides. And then we will have the opposite of the absolute value of 2x minus 5 equals 5. I want to get rid of this negative or opposite right here. And to do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 1. And when we do that, we have 2x minus 5 inside the absolute values, and that's going to equal negative 5. Absolute value means you're going to make it positive. Always going to be a positive. Is there any way we can have a number inside the absolute value sign and make it positive and end up with a negative? There is not. So this one, there is no solution. And you can use the empty set symbol, the 0 with a line through it. And that's because you can't have an absolute value that equals a negative. Letter G, we are going to start by adding 6 to both sides. And we end up with the absolute value of x minus 4 equals 0. There's only one number that has an absolute value of 0, which is 0. So we have x minus 4 equals 0. And if we add 4 to both sides, you are left with x equals 4.
I don't get how you got no solution.
Yeah, in just a second, okay. Letter H, subtract 8 from both sides. We are going to have negative 3 equals the absolute value of x plus 2. This absolute value means make it positive. So we need some number in here that we're going to make it positive, and then it ends up being a negative 3. Is there any number that when we take the absolute value of it, it equals a negative? So this is another one where there is no solution or empty set.